Okay. Some more information for you. This is, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The makers of drones want the media to stop calling their unmanned aircrafts drones. I don't know if you saw that. They don't like the name drones. I think that what they would prefer is surprise visitor. Well, our next guest is not a surprise visitor because he was supposed to have been here a long time ago, but he is here finally, and we're happy about it. He is one of the brightest young minds in the conservative movement today. He hosts a daily radio show, editor-at-large at Breitbart.com, lots of other things he does too, and he is the author of several national bestsellers, including his most recent work, which he brought a few along to sign for you all after this, if you're interested. He'll be out back, right outside the room. It's called Bullies. It's how the left's culture of fear and intimidation silences America. He became the youngest syndicated columnist in the country at the age of 17 and was one of the youngest graduates of UCLA and of Harvard Law School. He's smart. Gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce my friend Ben Shapiro.
Well, thanks, Mallory and Elizabeth, and I appreciate all of your patience. I was supposed to be here several weeks ago, and that fell through for a variety of reasons. But I want to start by talking about why we lost the 2012 election. I woke up the morning after the 2012 election. I listened to Mozart's Requiem a couple times. I took the cyanide on my nightside stand and put it aside after a careful look. And then I started trying to figure out why exactly we'd lost the 2012 election. President Obama's a horrible president, yet he'd won in a pretty solid walk. And what I came to was that it had to do, obviously, with technology. Our list was not as good as theirs was. Our technology was not as good as theirs. All of this was true. Orca failed. All of this was true. But in the end, the real reason we lost was pretty simple. Imagine that you're the average voter. You're not the people in this room who actually care about politics. You're the people out there who watched Miley Cyrus gyrating on stage with Robin Thicke last night at the Video Music Awards. Imagine that you're those people, and you're going to vote. And you walk into that voting booth, and all you know about the two candidates is what they've said about each other, right? Forget the media, just what they've said about each other. So all you know about Obama is what Mitt Romney has said about Obama, and all you know about Mitt Romney is what Barack Obama said about Mitt Romney. The picture that you'd get of Barack Obama is really not that bad a picture. What you'd get is bad president, not very good at his job, has passed some pretty bad legislation, maybe not the friendliest fellow, but overall, nice guy, good family man, believes in the Constitution, believes in the Declaration, embodies a lot of fundamental American principles. We just disagree on a lot of things, right? And then you turn over to the other side, and here's how you think of Mitt Romney. This guy is worse than Mussolini. And he's a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. This is a guy who ties dogs to the top of his car. This is the guy who's going to put y'all back in chains. This is the kind of guy who has binders full of women, not because he wants to hire women, but because he hates women and wants to have a binder so he can prevent them from getting contraception, right? This guy is the guy who forcibly cuts the hair of gay kids. This is who Mitt Romney is. Right? He's a Wall Street guy. In fact, not only is he a Wall Street guy, he's a guy who's shipping all of his money offshore so he doesn't have to pay taxes while he's singing in a ghostly voice, America the Beautiful, right? This is who Mitt Romney, he's a guy who actually gives people cancer, specifically so that 5 years after he fires them, right, the woman will die of cancer, right? This is who Mitt Romney is. Now, we all laugh at this because it's ridiculous. Unfortunately, it's exactly what happened in this election cycle. If you look at the exit polls showed Americans actually agreed with Mitt Romney on most of the issues. But when it came to, there was only one question that mattered, only one. Which candidate cares more about your values? Which candidate cares more about you? 81% to 19%. The answer was Barack Obama cares more about you and people like you. Okay, now, how do you possibly reach this conclusion? How could you get to this? Obama is one of the least caring individuals on planet Earth. You would not want to have a beer with this man. The entire thing would be about him. He can't stop talking about himself. Announcing bin Laden's death, he mentioned himself repeatedly. This is somebody who, he has never lived the life of a normal human being in this country, Barack Obama. How exactly did he become sympathetic figure number one? The answer is he didn't. Mitt Romney just became the bad guy. And this is where the bullying comes in. This is why we lose. The reason we lose is because we are the bad guys, And then by necessity, they're the good guys, because every story has a good guy and a bad guy. It's why every narrative that the left has told for the last 50 years has been about how nasty we are. Forget 50 years, go back 80 years when FDR was talking about malefactors of great wealth, right? It always, for the left, it always goes back to how nasty we are as individual human beings. And so the question becomes, how do we fight back against this? And we've all experienced this in our daily, look, I'm Jewish. That means my entire family, outside my immediate family, is radically liberal. And that means that every Thanksgiving, I sit down at that Thanksgiving dinner, and I know this is going to be a brutal Thanksgiving dinner. Right? I'm going to sit down at the Thanksgiving dinner, and Aunt Bertha is going to bring up Obamacare, and I'm going to talk about how Obamacare is terrible, and she's going to end up in tears, and we'll all go watch the Lions game. Right? So how do you fight back against this? Because most of us are nice people. Most of us don't want to be the bad guy in the room. It's not that much fun to be the bad guy in the room. It's easier to go and do your business and live with your family and be left alone. And this was sort of the tacit deal that we made with the left. Unfortunately, they're liars, so they didn't keep to it, but the tacit deal was that we were going to be nice to you, and you would be nice to us, and you would basically leave us alone. We'll leave you alone, right? We won't get involved in your personal lives. We won't put our morality on you, and you'll leave us alone, and that will be the deal. Unfortunately, that obviously was not the deal. We became the bad guys in their way of framing the argument. So the question becomes, how do you fight this? And the answer is that you have to go on the offensive all the time. There is no such thing as the defense in this. There is no such thing as the defensive. So basically, you know, I'm boiling this down to three. There are basically three ways to argue with a liberal. First thing to know about arguing with a liberal is when to do it and when not to do it. In general, there are really only a couple situations where it's worthwhile arguing with a liberal. First situation or discussing with a liberal. First situation in which you should discuss with the liberal is if the liberal is serving you dinner and you don't want it spit in, then you should have a nice conversation. The second situation in which you should argue with a liberal is if this happens to be the one honest liberal. Congratulations, you found him. He's wandering somewhere around the prairies of Oklahoma somewhere. And the third reason to talk with a liberal is if you have an audience and you're going to humiliate them dramatically in front of the audience. Really, I'm dead serious about this. And folks on the right don't do this. We all think that we can convince everybody, and it's not true. We can't convince everybody. The left understands they can't. That's why they don't argue with us. They go and take over institutions, then use the institutions as clubs to beat us into submission. It's why they take over the mainstream media and use it as a club to hit us. It's why they take over Hollywood and they use it as a club to hit us. It's why they go and they take over academia and use it as a club to hit us. For us, you know, we need to stop thinking in terms of talking to individual liberals and think about how we defeat them. And the most important way to do that is by humiliating liberals in public. And the most obvious way to humiliate a liberal in public, really, is to talk about character. This is why the left wins. The left talks character and we talk policy. You know, we'll sit here, we'll talk about how Medicaid is terrible. We'll talk about, we can give statistics, actually, on how Medicaid is the worst thing in the world and how it destroys states. And all that's true. We can talk about how the black community has seen an equal to or increased income gap with the white community over the last all of that's true. The problem is that it doesn't resonate with folks because at the same time we say, well, you're a nice person. You're just wrong, but you're a nice person. That's not true. They're not a nice person. Your average liberal is actually a nice person, but the people who are in policy positions they're not just ignorant at this point. After 40, 50, 60 years of this, ignorance is a sin. These are not nice people, they are nasty people, and they are characterizing you as a nasty person so that they can take the heart out of you and make you silent so that you don't talk back to them. This is what happened in the last election cycle. When Mitt Romney wouldn't get up there and say to Barack Obama what he had done on Benghazi was disgusting. This is what happened during the last election cycle when we all tried to laugh off the war on women. They were demonizing us and we were laughing at it, and it doesn't work. When someone calls you a racist, the answer is not to treat that person with respect. The answer is to spit on them. Because the fact is that if you're not a racist and they're calling you a racist without evidence, that makes them a nasty human being. That's the nastiest thing that you can do in America today, because the worst thing you can call someone in America is a racist, for good reason. And if you call somebody a racist without evidence, that makes you just not even worthy of debate. And in fact, when you debate somebody who calls you a racist, you're legitimating their point of view. They call you a racist, and you return with, oh, well, you're a rational human being. Let me explain to you the reasons why I'm not a racist. What you're actually saying is that you are a racist, because you're saying, they say to you, you're a racist, and you respond, well, you know what, you're rational for calling me a racist. And you've given them the argument. You've said to them that it's okay if they called you a racist. They're still rational on that. So bottom line is, you have to go on the offensive. You have to frame your opponent. You have to frame your opponent as a bad person. You do. It has to be a character argument, and you have to punch back twice as hard, because if you don't, they're going to continue to win.
Okay, let's take a couple of questions. Questions? Any question over there? Yes, sir.
Shapiro, what about the fact that conservatives, establishment, and libertarians just can't seem to get it together? We have this anti-vote, the protest non-vote, where, well, this guy is only 80% of my value as a conservative or a Republican, therefore I will not vote for him. He's not good enough. McCain gave us some red meat when he gave us Sarah Palin, but that wasn't good enough for some folks, or it was just too radical for others. And we just can't get it together as Republicans and vote en masse for whoever wins the primary.
Well, I think that there's a reason for that, and that's because people don't vote for things, they vote against things. As much as people in politics like to think that no matter that they can present a visionary ideal, the fact is the visionary ideal has to be wrapped in the converse, which is that the person who they're opposing is a nasty human being. I mean, the fact is that Ronald Reagan wins in 1980 not because he's a visionary, but because he's running against Jimmy Carter, right? And he was not shy about characterizing Jimmy Carter as a bumbling moron, right? And that resonated with folks. Every winning campaign is based on the inherent negative of the campaign. The reason that we won in 2010 is not name me the idea that won us 2010. Now name me the idea that we voted against in 2010. It was Obamacare. That's the reason we all went to the polls in 2010, right? And in 2012, what exactly were we voting for when we went to vote for Mitt Romney? We weren't voting for Mitt Romney. We were voting against Barack Obama. The problem was Mitt Romney wasn't giving us a reason to vote against Barack Obama. So a lot of folks were out there saying, okay, I can, this Romney guy's okay, but he didn't really, this Obama guy is also, he's not great, but I guess he's also kind of okay. Every story is a polarity. And I said this earlier at a lunch. Every story is a polarity. Star Wars opens on the bad guy, right? Luke Skywalker is the most boring character in human history. Every story opens with Darth Vader. And then you know who Darth Vader is, and now you know who Luke Skywalker is. Okay, if you're not going to have a Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker is just some annoying teenager on Tatooine.
By the way, I could listen to Ben for hours. I think we only have time for one more question.
Okay, point taken. Point taken. Because, I live that life quite a bit. Probably a lot of us do in certain circles of our lives. But, Ben, I have a question. I have to agree. We do not have everybody on the conservative side working towards, they're nitpicking over smaller things where liberals do not nitpick. They all are quick to be, if you want to use the word nasty, gather under one umbrella despite their differences.
Could you?
Yeah.
We cannot. How do we, thank you, Mallory, how do we get our side, get the Christies, the Rands, the Libertarians, how do we get under one umbrella?
Chicken wings and tater tots.
By identifying an enemy. The reason that the Republican Party has splintered since the fall of the Soviet Union is that the Soviet Union was the enemy. The existential enemy went away, and the Republican Party has been searching for its identity ever since. Unless we're able to characterize an enemy and spell that out, we are not going to be able to unify the party. The party has to unify based on what it is united against, especially conservatism, which is really united against the kind of Marxist socialist change that the left wants to bring to America on a very radical basis. That's why people are enthusiastic right now. Obama he actually provides the greatest galvanizing opportunity for conservatives in American history. We just have to latch on to that, and we have to be willing to speak the truth, not only about him personally, but about the movement he represents and about the people who are associated with him. And I'm talking specifically about Hillary Clinton there.
Don't forget to get bullies. By the way, my dear friend over here, this young pup, is going to be a new dad in a few months. Congratulations.